I'm one of the last of the boomers. And my parents were young because that's what you did in those days. You got married right out of high school. And because they were young, I grew up listening to Top 40 radio in the 1960s and 70s. And because I grew up in the New York area, I wound up listening to the best of the disc jockeys. A lot of them truly understood the whole concept of the theater of the mind. And as I got a little older, I moved into listening to talk radio, especially late at night, because you see, AM waves, they travel further at night. So you could hear voices from Boston and Detroit and Cincinnati coming in through the night static. And it was pretty exciting working the dial and trying to pull in something from somewhere you hadn't heard previously. And if the weather was cooperating, you heard some cool stuff. And if it wasn't, then what you'd gotten probably wouldn't last for long. But the bottom line is that radio and sound in general became my thing. But it always paired with my love for popular music, and I would spend time learning the stories behind the songs and the artists that brought me their gift. When I was a young adult, I had to give up my dreams of becoming a radio guy, partly because I could see that the industry was changing and not necessarily in a good way. And so I turned toward education and I started working in schools, but I never gave up the love for the music. And after a while, the two started to come together, the education and the music. And I would constantly listen to songs on the radio, and I would pop out with some arcane fact about the song or the artist. Hey, you know what's kind of weird about the Marshall Tucker Band? There's nobody named Marshall Tucker in the band. Marshall Tucker was a blind piano tuner that kind of thing. It's practically an occupational hazard. Well, there's only so many times that you can say stuff like that to your wife without her threatening you with a gardening implement, and clearly I needed to channel that energy somewhere else. Fortunately, podcasting became a thing, and I was pretty excited by the medium. I came in on the early days of Mark Maron's show and On the Page and Surf Caldwell's Progressive Show. That was his first foray into internet-based radio. And all of those things kind of came together for me into realizing that A, radio wasn't dead, it just moved to a new home, and B, anyone has the power to touch thousands of lives, and all over the globe, not just in your immediate region. It took me a long while actually, to come around to the idea that I could take my love for music, my desire to educate people, and my need to spout odd trivia, and roll it all into a single entertaining and informative product. And that's what I do now. I've got a respectable number of listeners from literally around the world. And the thing I like most are the people who tell me that they heard I was going to talk about a song that I didn't really like, but they listened anyway and maybe managed to learn something about it that they found kind of interesting, despite themselves. And that to me is the coolest thing about doing my podcast, that I have the power to get people to view some part of their world a little bit differently. That's my sound effect.